Hey folks, my name is Nick and I run District North Media and Design, a boutique design studio in northern New Hampshire. And you're probably wondering, what do you know about esports? To be honest, I know a little bit about esports. I actually have a few clients in the esports arena. And while I was doing some research about doing a couple of branding projects, I kind of realized I don't really like a lot of the esports logos that are currently out there. There are some really good ones. A lot of them are based off of current physical sports teams, i.e. mascots and kind of typography based things that I feel like don't really represent the esports arena right now. I am a gamer myself, and so I am passionate about those types of things, and I feel like they're kind of missing the ball just by taking a lot from physical sports instead of kind of reinventing themselves. So I came up with the idea while I was sketching one day that it might be kind of fun to do a different type of video based on an imaginary client or an imaginary sports team. So I came up with the idea of doing, and I apologize if this is already a team out there. I didn't do much research. I came up with the idea of doing a Counter-Strike logo for a team called the Resistance. And I just kind of threw it together while I was sketching one day, and it's kind of a fun little logo. I didn't take myself too seriously while designing it. I just wanted to get the ideas out, and hopefully it is kind of fun and resonates with people. But if you like this type of stuff or like this type of video, please subscribe and I will hopefully do more. But for now, just sit back and enjoy like you're sitting in my crazy ass little studio here, and we can kind of hang out together. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's hop into here. And this is how I have mine set up. If you hit Command R, it brings up your rules, and you're going to use that a lot when you're doing branding work. And I do all my logos pretty much in Illustrator. It's all vector formats. So sometimes what I'll do, if you hit, whoops, cancel I. So you can just go ahead and change whatever. If you hit document setup up here, and you can change the edit artboard. And let's go ahead and just make it a little bit bigger. Wink, like that. So I do have this picture I just copied and pasted in here, and it is what I kind of like. I kind of like the shape. And the idea behind it was I wanted to create an esports team logo for a made-up company. I don't know if it's actually out there, or a team that's called the Resistance, and I just kind of picked it out of my head and threw it on there and was sketching, and this kind of came out, which I thought was a really kind of cool way of representing an R on its side, with kind of like an arrow forcing the bending part of this whole thing kind of bending, and the arrow shooting through it. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool to have like a Counter-Strike logo that represents the aggressiveness of it, but also is kind of a strong logo. And I'm not sure I'm gonna stick with the star. I just kind of wanted to throw something in there, but I thought it looked pretty neat as an R, and you can kind of rotate it and see it a little bit better. But so this looked neat, and I said, you know, maybe I should throw up just a quick video of this and see if people are interested in me, showing you how to do this. So if you're an expert in Illustrator, don't bother watching this. It's not for you. I'm going to kind of try to go through the basics. So start with layer 1. I usually lock this, throw up another layer. If you go ahead and you just double click on this layer, it'll bring up your layer options. And just like always, dim this to 50%. And we're going to call this guy original. Okay, and then this will keep pretty much the same. Sometimes what I do, if I do a lot of layers, I'll do a base down first and work that way. But I'll do this a few different ways just to kind of show you how I'd work. to start this off, to make sure everything's perfect, I think I'm going to start with a square. So I'm actually going to unlock that layer, drag this whole thing and move it back to where it was, and we'll kind of play with it later, but just to kind of get it as close as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then hit in here, and we're gonna use perfect shapes though, so it'll fix it. So I'm gonna make a square first by hitting the hitting the old square up here. The rectangle tool is M on your keyboard. Slide, hold Shift, and you create a nice, beautiful square. Okay, that's selected. I didn't have anything colors shaped in here, so let's just go ahead and just put black. Another thing I do, in case you are wondering, usually when you open up Illustrator, you can do presets for this, but usually I just open it up and then I delete all the swatches in here because it's annoying to have all these swatches. So if you just select the first one in here and then hold Shift and go down to the bottom, it selects all of them, and then you just drag them all into the little trash here and you don't need them anymore. So I'm gonna make this a stroke, and I'm just gonna make it kind of big. So there. So now I have my my outside box here. And again, I'm not an expert in logo design. I'm not an expert in really anything, but I thought this would be fun to take you along with me on this fun little journey with me, making some happy little logos. A little shout out to Bob Ross if you dig that, from the 70s. I guess he's got a comeback coming. He was a Marine drill instructor, in case anyone wanted to know. So go ahead, and I usually stroke this to about where I want it, and you can use the inner one if you want, if it's quicker. I've just learned to do it this way. But actually I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to show you how I do it another way, which is grab your rectangle tool again. And this way you can keep everything exactly the same. Go ahead and shift that over. And you can use grids. I'm not knocking if you want to use grids. Go ahead and do that. But if you watch my typography video, you see me use the eraser tool a lot. And you can see in here, I just activated it by hitting Shift E. And that brings up your eraser. And you can do things like this. Just cut that off and delete it. Usually if I'm doing logo design, I don't want this extra bit in here. So what you can do, if you're trying to make perfect shapes again, just go ahead and highlight both of them, and you can actually use your divide tool and click it, and then just delete these, and then select all of them and merge. And sometimes what happens is you're left over with these anchor points, and when you're doing final logos, you want to make sure that you delete those, because those can be problematic. But that looks pretty nice, and we'll want to make sure that that this works. So just hit your direct select tool over there, and I have mine set up a certain way. It's my own personal workspace under District North, so keep that in mind. None of this might look different for you, but you can set it up any way you want, and if you want help doing that, I don't know, find another YouTube video about it, I guess. So I'm going to drag this out to about there, but I want to make sure that this distance, and the nice thing about Cloud is it does do a lot of distance work like Sketch does. I use Sketch as well, and Sketch is nice because it'll actually show you distance when you're moving objects around, and so does Photoshop now, which I just upgraded to CC, so I'm super excited about that. But it normally what I would be doing would be this, and in case you're running an older version, you don't have that capability, you can just kind of get things to be perfect by doing that and using smart guides. And so you can use your direct select and sliding that over, and now you know that this distance is the exact same as this distance between the stroke and the shape. And that becomes important later on, or especially when you're doing logo design. So again, keeping all these distances kind of the same, sliding this up. And another thing I do is you hit Command Y and you bring up your outline view. And just if you want to toggle between these, just hit Command and then click on that eye, and it'll just select this layer so that you can see that layer, but this one still stays in outline view. So go ahead, I'm gonna just slide it over here. And when I created this, this is just moved at a 45-degree angle, and I know that because I'm gonna rotate this whole thing 45 degrees. So if you hold the, if you're making this and you just hold Shift down and then rotate, hit R and then Shift, and while you pull, there you go, it's at a 45-degree angle. And again, I know some people already know this. It's just to let everyone know that we're on the same page. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to select both of these, and then I'm going to use the minus front. Boop, like that. And boom, we got this nice little shape going on. And another thing that I really love about CC is the rounded corners aspect, which is really, really nice if you're if you want to do like a nice rounded feel. Just go ahead and select them and then move them into place. I'm not going to do that right now, but I might play with it later. So just Command Z. And again, I'm gonna make sure these are all kind of perfect, and this is one way of doing it too, which is using smart guides. And again, you can use grids if you want. I'm certainly not telling you can't. Do whatever you feel comfortable with. And some people find grids extremely easy to use and are really good at it. Sometimes I'm just faster doing it this way. And so I'm gonna move these along just to give me an idea. So I might have to move some of these around a little bit more, but it looks like that's kind of what I'm going for. And so this is kind of how this is going to work. I got clients talking to me, and that's just how it works. Slide this down. And boom. And again, I'm just making sure everything's kind of perfect. And you can line things up just by eyeball here. You know, I just slid that down. Make sure, I do make sure that my smart guides are on, because it is really, really helpful if you do have that. And there are some issues in here that I'm going to see coming up that might be a problem, but for the most part, I can correct most of that stuff. So just make sure when you do what I'm about to do is make sure that both of these are past each other. So like this has to be all the way past that, and vice versa. And then we go ahead and we do the same thing. I like to use divide when I'm doing this stuff because it keeps a lot of this intact, and then you can just delete the stuff you don't want. And select, oops. I'm gonna get rid of Windows. If you go to Windows, I'm sorry, if you go to View and then down to Guides, there's a bunch of command options for what you can do to the guides. Hide them, lock them, release guides. I'm going to clear all guides because I don't really want them right now. And then I'm going to move this whole thing over a scooch. And I want this to line up with this. I want this to have a pretty nice look to it. So I might actually bring this whole thing out a little bit more. Just to kind of meet that line, because I want to kind of give this a nice, I want you to definitely recognize that it's an R, but it might take you a second to realize what the R is doing. So it's not super important to me, but again, merge these and we're just playing. I have no idea if this is going to look good or not. I'm just seeing if it's going to happen. If it works, then awesome. If not, then I'll look like an idiot, I guess. But so I'm actually gonna delete these squares because I don't really need them right now. So then I move this over, and I want to, again, if you want to make sure that this is on that line, just highlight this and hit Command 2, and that locks this, so you can't move it around anymore. You can't touch it, but you can pull anchor and path points off of it. So hit P on your keyboard, and then select that corner, hold Shift, drag it all the way down here. And now you have a line that's a perfect 45-degree angle coming down. And again, logos aren't perfect. This isn't, you know, it's just, I just want to see what it's going to look like at perfect. Sometimes you have to change stuff, and sometimes you have to move things around. So I just want to see what it looks like when it's perfectly done. So we're going to slide that down onto there. And now I know that this is exactly a 45-degree angle, but this is kind of not great because this is really thin and this is really thick. And so sometimes that can work, sometimes it can't. It all depends on a few things, but we're going to go ahead and just power through and see what happens. Now I want to have this, as you can see here, it kind of cuts at the angle of the box. So I'm actually going to drag another square in and line it up with this edge, and then just do the same thing. Select it, copy, so Command F, Command C, Command F at the same time, well, one after the other, and then hit R and rotate that bugger around. Hold Shift while you're doing it, slide it down, and this is going to be lined up with that bottom. So this gives me the corner of that edge, and then do the same thing. I'm going to merge it, and then you can use the subtract and cut it out. And then this is an exact corner. You know, this is a 90-degree corner now, so you don't really have to worry too much about that. And I'm going to delete that because I'm on that line just fine. And now I have a pretty cool looking R. There are some problems because this distance is really far now. So it was nice to see how that was going to kind of pan out. And sometimes what I do is I just pull it out just to see what it looks like. Now, it looks kind of futuristic, which I dig. But when I rotate it, it loses a little bit of something in here. And I have a feeling if I zoomed out, it might be a little bit hard to see when you're looking at it real small. So that's something to keep in mind. Always zoom out, zoom back in when you're doing logos. It's actually really, really important. So now that we have that guy going, I don't love this, and especially when you zoom out, you want to make sure that this distance is pretty similar to this, and sometimes you want to change this back and forth, so that's not always the case. But ideally, what I always try to do is, let's go ahead and just create a new one because I don't want to destroy anything there. Drag it over here. And ideally what you want to try to do is have this distance be the same as this distance or very close to it. So what I'll do just to make sure that's kind of the same is just hold Shift and Option down at the same time, and it'll drag it up, and then do the same. You can just hit Command Y, get into outline mode, slide this booger down, boop, boop, boop. And you can do a little bit less than that if you want, but Command Y back. I think this looks a lot better, but I still don't love how these don't line up anymore. So it's one of those things where you just gotta, either you gotta sacrifice some stuff because I want it to be perfect. You might have to, like I said, sacrifice just a little bit to get to that point. But let me just see what it looks like if I do bring in some sort of background here. Boop. And I just want to see what it looks like if it's like that. Yeah, I mean, it still holds its integrity as an R, so that's kind of neat. But let's switch it back to this. I like doing a lot of white background, black. Just the high contrast is really helpful when you're doing logos. And again, logos like this, it is pretty helpful. So I will slide this back a little bit. And I don't mind that so much. Go into your shapes here, or if you have it out like I do, and just select star. And when you're dragging out a star, hold Shift, and if you hold Command at the same time, you can change the dimensionality of the star, so you can actually make it perfect, and you can do that in the commands as well, but I find it super easy when you're just doing it like that. Let me just reference the sketch again. So it's kind of like that, huh? It does kind of look like a Superman logo now that I'm looking at it. At least that shape is. The shape in here looks kind of like the Superman logo, which I don't like, which is not what I want to do at all. So let's see if I do flip her back around. Maybe I won't bother to do that. Again, holding shift the entire time, so. And if you want it to be absolutely perfect, copy and paste in front, slide over. And I'm just kind of getting an idea of what that background would look like, and I still don't like it, so. This might be a completely failed experiment at this point. I'm not sure. I will adjust a few of these things because I feel like this is super thick, even though it's exactly the same. As you saw when I created this whole thing, all these lines are exactly the same. So if you're looking at it and this seems thicker, what you want to do when you're doing type especially, and it's a little more difficult because it's an R turned on its side, but with type, you always want to have your vertical lines be a lot thicker than your horizontal lines. And that's just because visually when you're looking at it, it is more pleasing. So I'll delete those guys. And that's how we can kind of get this to be a little bit closer, I think. So if you use your direct select tool, and I don't want to move this corner too much, but I can move these points in certain directions. So let's say, and I want to thin this whole section in a little bit more. So let's bring it up. Actually, let's get some guides in here first. So that's where that exact center is. And let's bring this up to here. And it's looking a little bit better. And I'm just looking at this right now. I'm just making sure that this thickness looks okay to my eye. And we know that it's perfect, and that's the fun thing about type is perfect doesn't always mean that it looks good. So you really do have to play with things, and now it looks way too thin to me. So if you kind of squint, the squint test is, you just kind of sit back and you squint your eyes. If when you do that it doesn't quite look right, it means you did something wrong. And the great thing about it is Control Z on this and you fixed all your problems. Let me move this over a little bit more. And I'm just sizing this. If you need to select something quickly, all you do is hit S on your keyboard and it goes into scale, and you can scale this by holding shift at the same time and dragging and clicking and dragging out. So that's pretty helpful if you don't know how to do that. And I like how this lines up a little bit more. I'm going to delete that guide. And I think this looks a little bit better. Now this feels a little too thick. And this is how logos are. I know it's not super fun. It's a lot of boring tasks. I am concerned if this was printed. It doesn't look too bad, but I would be concerned if this was printed really small, how close that is to there. So I think I might bring it down a little bit. And what we can do to kind of test out the angles here is just, I'm going to try to do rounded. Well, actually, you know what, let's try to just do a square. And you just drag a square out, hold shift again, and then rotate, hold shift, boom, we'll put it up here on the top. I'm going to hit Command Shift and the brackets, and that'll send it all the way back. And then highlight this whole thing. We're just going to make it white. And it does kind of look like the Reebok logo, or is it the Reebok logo? I'm not positive it's the Reebok. It is reminding me of something. But this was why we kept those constraints being at 90-degree angles, so that we can do this and we don't have to kind of redo it every single time. I knew I was going to bring this in like this, so I think it does look pretty cool. It's kind of unique and a little bit different, and that is definitely what I was going for. I do want to kind of round these corners out. I think it just looks a little bit nicer. And maybe it looks like the Rockstar logo. I'm not quite sure what the logo is. It's like a mix between a lot of different logos. A Converse logo. I'm getting a lot of vibes from this one. So let me copy behind here. We're going to increase the size of this. And sometimes to increase the size behind these shapes before, well, after you round those corners, sometimes this happens, and I'll just show you so I can. So let's say, oops. So let's say this you know, you want to round these corners and you want to add a stroke to it afterwards. So let's round these corners down a little bit. And then if you copy and paste behind, you then have a copy behind this, and we'll change the color to blue so you can see it. And if I hit S and scale it out, so let's say I wanted to make a stroke that way, as you can see, it doesn't quite work. This space is a little bit different than this space. And so if you want it to be perfect, the trick is to use the stroke, and you basically are doing the same thing. You're just taking that shape and you're adding a stroke to it by dragging. You can drag that color into there, and then round the edges, and then increase the stroke size. And you can do this pretty easily and see how it's perfect all the way around. And you can use the, if you want to do it faster, you can use the align stroke to the outside. And I can take this away and I'll show you what that looks like. So basically, if I do that, so if you're aligned to the outside, it goes all the way to the outside, the inside, opposite, and then in the center. I usually just leave it on the center because I can increase it pretty quickly, but if you're a stickler, go ahead and do that. So what I wanted to do was increase that, then take this out. Well, I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Bring it down. And then I'm going to copy behind again, and I'm going to change it to a different color. I'm going to show you why I'm doing this in a second. Let's increase that to about there. Okay, so now we have these other shapes in here, and I'm going to do the same thing I was doing. Make a new layer. Boop, right there. Highlight the whole thing and command, oh, actually, that's a hotkey for me, so expand appearance or expand, but just go ahead and expand it. And now you have those shapes that you can play with, so they're actually in there fully expanded. And when you have that, you just highlight the blue one, and I want to make it the background color. And I wanted to do that so that I could do this. And now you have a perfect kind of shape all the way around. And I think that looks pretty decent. It's not perfect, and there are times when you might not, you know, use that, but hopefully you can pull some of the techniques from it. I might want to actually chop the top off of this. Not sure if I like it, but that's just an afterthought. So it's not terrible, and I think it's a little bit better than some of the other ones that are out there that look real bad, but that would be kind of my solution. And now that we kind of have that as a kind of a cool little logo mark, maybe it wouldn't be that. Maybe it'd be kind of cooler if it was more like a, instead of a star, maybe we do 4. Maybe something like that. Maybe because this Counter-Strike, maybe it's less of, well, maybe gun sights. So let's go with our ellipsis tool and put that in there. I haven't played Counter-Strike in a long time, so I'm not sure. Sorry, anybody out there who's an avid Counter-Strike person and they think that this is a terrible logo, that is totally cool, and your opinion is valid. I just don't care. So, rotate that. One of these times I get it. I don't mind that. I mean, I probably wouldn't do that for a logo just because, I don't know. I just probably wouldn't. But it does look kind of cool. Instead of the star there, I'm trying to think of some other shape. I should have done a little bit more research when it comes to Counter-Strike. But I didn't mind the star. It wasn't the worst. But it might make more sense to be something that's a little bit more shapely. And that might work a little bit better. Yeah, I don't know. Now I'm second guessing myself, which we often do as artists. Yeah, maybe something like that might kind of look cool. Maybe it's kind of StarCrafty. So, you know, this is just kind of how I work, and, you know, I mean, this space, it looks pretty good. This is still a little thick to me. I think I'm probably going to move this in just a scooch. And about there. And the nice thing is that if you're still holding, so let's say I wanted to make sure that this angle was the same as this angle. And a quick dirty way of doing that is just to highlight this, hold shift, and duplicate it down so that you have this exact line to use. I mean, I guessed it pretty close, but if you wanted to make sure it was perfect, just do that. And this is, again, a reason why we were doing everything and making sure everything was right angles, because it makes this a lot easier, because when you're dragging on a 45-degree angle, it's a lot easier. So I would drag this up and just zoom in real close and drag it up to there. And, you know, obviously I can see I'm off a little bit. And then I just lock this shape. So Command 2 to lock it. Highlight this back one, direct select that pixel point. I'm sorry, that vector point, and then slide it over. Whoops. There. And then unlock that. You can use Command Y too to make it a little bit easier to see. And see, I even went over a little bit too much, so zoom in. Whoops. There we go. And then we slide it right there. Now it's perfect. And you'll have to do that, and you can do it a lot of different ways, but that's just like a quick and dirty way of doing it. And I don't mind it being a little quick and dirty. So I kind of like this. It looks kind of like a mountain to me too, and it's got some kind of cool aspects to it. So I think this would look rad on like a patch or something. I think I'm gonna go back to something that's not like this. I don't know why this shape is bothering me so much, but let's add a little circle to it. Maybe that might be kind of cool. So flip the script. All right, there we go. And that looks kind of cool, kind of futuristic and fun. I mean, it doesn't really meet these things are way too small for such a big logo. But let's work on some type. Or actually, let's take that out. I know this is the fun part, right? Alright, cool. So I don't mind this. I think it definitely still looks like an R, but boy, look how weird it looks when you flip it like that, and look how kind of right it looks there. Yeah, wow. So then again, I want to fix that, so we're gonna do the same thing, quick and dirty. We're gonna slide this down, zoom in, boop, zoop, slide that up to the top, and then we're gonna direct select that vector point and slide it over there, and boom, boom, boom. We're done there. And I like the way that that looks. I think it looks fun. I think it would do really well in the esports arena. I still am struggling with this shape. I don't quite know what I should do here. But that is the designer's dilemma, right? So let me see here. There. Yeah, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of different things, and I kind of love that it does. Not sure if I love how like straight this is. Might look kind of cool if we actually take this and drag it on. Whoops. Take this, direct select just those vector points and slide it down to there. That look kind of cool. I don't mind it. It's not exactly what I'm going for though. Yeah. I think that looks pretty good. Squint test is okay. I would be worried about, and always keep in mind when you're doing logos, select the whole thing. I usually select everything. I bring it into a whole new layer. And I mean, I'm trying to do this quick, so I don't want to get too bogged down with much, but I think this would be a good starting point for a logo and to kind of really develop it. So right now what I'm doing is I kind of highlighted everything, expanded it, merged just the black, and then deleted the white. And the reason I do that is because I want to do this, which is highlight this whole thing, slide it over and duplicate it, and then create a rectangle around it, throw that rectangle behind this object, highlight and make it white, and I want to see what it looks like on the two different versions. And you always do this with your logos. It doesn't matter if it's esports or not. Always do it with your logos. And I even see problems with it now. See, when you switch it over, see how this gets really, really close and looks perfectly fine in here. So if I was doing this as a logo, I would make sure that on white, and I would submit this with the actual documentation for branding style guides, that this needs to be a little bit farther apart. So just to kind of quick and dirty it, I'll just slide it open like that. And it would be more like that. And it's not a huge change, but I know when this would be printed on black, it would look a little weird because it would be too close. It might bleed in a little bit too close to each other. And it might happen over here too, but it's less likely to happen on black on a white background. So, you know what I mean? I think that's a fun little logo and is a little bit different than what's currently out there. And let's say the team name's the Resistance or something. I think it would be fun to have that on shirts. It's not perfect, and there is things we can do to change it, but again, I just wanted to be a quick and fun little video about esports logos, and you can use a cool, let's just throw like a cool font in here. Resist. Let's make sure I can see it here, folks. Resist. Well, I don't know, should we do, let's see, what would be cool fun, like orbital, Tron would be a fun one, I think. And let's change it to uppercase. And let's do resist. Let's do resistance. Something like that. Might be more fun. And I'm just gonna kind of place it in here. I'm not gonna worry too much about it. If it was me, screw it. I'm gonna show you how to up this type a little bit better. So I don't mind this whole look. I think if I was doing this professionally, I probably would make it look a lot more like this type. But I don't mind this. It doesn't look too terrible. Again, I'm super picky when it comes to this type of stuff. So for me to do a quick video about it is a bit difficult. But let me just try to bump up this type a little bit more. Let's just say Counter-Strike Team. I don't know what they're called, but something like that with a little subheader. We'll increase the size there. And just if you want to do type and you want to increase the size, they always call it tracking. I've never called it tracking. I always called it kerning. But if you ever want to adjust it, just come down here and you can use your mouse slider to increase it. And I use that a lot because it's way quicker than clicking the buttons. But I just want to increase it just a scooch, and then slide this back. And so you see what I'm just trying to make this look a little bit cooler, have a little bit more fun. And it might be interesting to do like some scrapes or something in it, and you can do some fun like scrapes and cuts in it and make it look like it's been through, a battle or something. Might be kind of fun. And I don't want to get too much into that, but just to show you how I would do that, it'd be something like this, maybe. And you can kind of drag these around. Flip that. Something like that might be kind of neat, to show that it's been through kind of war. Or a battle of some kind. It wouldn't necessarily be a war. So let's group that whole guy together. And I like this type. It looks pretty good. And we can kind of slide down here, and I think maybe whoops, don't want to delete that one. Just highlight that one and then erase. And again, a quick and dirty way of doing it. We're trying to keep this as quick as possible. I know I've got some shit for my my longer videos because people don't want to stick around to hear me talk, which I get. Sometimes it's difficult to listen to me jabber on. But I think that looks pretty decent. And then just go ahead and I'm going to expand this entire thing. So I think it might be a custom one for me, the way I expand, but if you want, you can create your own. I think I put it in here as Command E, but you expand it out, and then I'm going to expand this one too. And I think what I'm going to do, because sometimes what happens when you're doing your like lower, your like slogan term on a logo, having it in like a thin font like this might make it hard to see sometimes. So it is nice to add something in there that might work a little bit better. So sometimes what I do is I put it on a plate. I don't know the actual logo terminology of it, but I call it a plate. And I want to kind of round it to match this rounding up here. And we can just place it inside of here now. This happy little space. And I think it's starting to kind of come together pretty nicely. I like how these kind of shapes match the shape up here, so it's pretty close. But I'd want to kind of bring it all together if we're going to do a full branding package. And so let me highlight both of those, and I'm going to slide the whole thing together. And so what I'm doing now is I basically, you want to group everything that you're having on its own layer, and then I'm going to do the alignment over here. So you can align it however you want, and I think there's some cool like pieces of this that you can kind of pull from different areas, and I think it would work really nice. And my computer's thinking about it. There we go. And I might want to move this down a scooch, like that. And let's see here. Okay, so now we got this type. Looks pretty boring, not super fun. So how are we going to fix that? I like how the R looks, and it has this kind of straight, you know, it's not in there. So we're going to throw some boxes in and see what we can do. And again, if you've seen my videos, you know that I do this a lot. I just play with shapes and see how it works out. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I'm hoping that it does this time around. Kind of liking how this is turning out so far. And again, just playing around. Don't take yourself seriously. You're just having fun. I don't like this, so I think I'd probably actually switch this up to be something more like, maybe more like that. Yeah, I don't mind that. And like I said, we're doing it dirty. Just trying to speed up my time, see how quickly I can do this without making it look too terrible. I don't know about that, but we'll keep going. Oops. And all I'm doing is just sliding down, holding shift, and duplicating it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might not really mesh too well with the rest of this because this doesn't have any sort of stenciling effect in it. I do like the way it looks, but like I said, it might not really make much sense. So I think I'm actually gonna keep. Maybe I'll just keep that one because I kind of like the way that hold on. Boop, 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 boop. I kind of like the way that R looks. And what you can do, if that didn't work out for you on your project, you can do these fun little like ligature extensions. Sometimes it works when you're using fonts like this, where you kind of bring all the letter forms together. Something like this, where you're kind of going back and forth. You never want to run, well, never, I shouldn't say never, but a lot of times you don't want to run the whole thing like this because it just covers up everything. But if you kind of go back and forth, I've noticed that it looks really nice if like one's down here, one's up, one's down here. It depends on the letters, so really try to focus on readability as well. You don't want people to look at your logos and be like, what does it say? A big part of it is readability, and you really have to understand that up front. But I actually don't like it. I'm not liking the way it's looking, so I'm gonna actually just take all that garbage out. And I think maybe what I'm gonna do is just take this down here, so the last one and the first one have a little bit of something cool going on. And I kind of like repeating this shape in here, might be kind of neat. So maybe we take out that, and and I'm just hiding this. Basically, I'm going to take that shape, I'm going to hit Command X, I'm going to select this shape, and then Command F, and it's going to copy it in front, and then I'm going to copy that in front of that. So it's kind of fun, a little bit different. I don't necessarily think I'd go with that, but again, this is the fun part of like testing this out. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that and delete that, just because I like the cleaner version of this a little bit more. And then there we go. I think the logo is pretty much done. It's not perfect. I see that there are problems, but I'm okay with it. And I think it's a little bit different than what's currently out there. And I think if you're really looking for something in esports that is a little bit more fun and maybe has a little bit of other aspects of design, instead of what I'm seeing a lot in the esports is just pulling from actual sports teams right now. And I think we can kind of be a little bit different. And I think this would be fun doing something like this, because you could expand this out to a lot of different lines where you could have hand-drawn logos like this that would look really cool, and maybe have other people, you know, contribute to how this thing looks. So yeah, I mean, I think this is fun. I think it's cool. I think if you're looking for something a little bit different, this might work perfectly for you. And you know, I mean, it's one of those projects that I'm just trying to do every once in a while, where I show you guys maybe a different way of thinking about things. So that is my esports logo tutorial. Well, thanks for following along with me and coming all the way to the end here. It is like midnight right now, and I am super excited that we got to hang out. As promised, if you made it all the way to the end, if you are interested, I can actually send you a couple free fonts. So if you just actually go down below and email me, just basically say, hey, saw you on YouTube, thought I could get some free fonts from you, I will shoot you some free stuff that I created, maybe a couple vectors. If you're interested, I never want people to feel like they come to my channel empty-handed and leave empty-handed. So if you are interested in that, please subscribe and like and comment and do all that goofy shit that YouTubers love. I personally don't really understand it, and but I just want to help the community and help the people that are on here that really do find these videos interesting. But if you shoot me an email, I'll shoot you some free stuff. So, sound good? All right, cool. And till next time, thanks. Bye.